It's not hazing if you love it. Part 1. Jody arrives at her sorority sex challenge more than ready. It wasn't the first time she'd flashed a perfect stranger. Jody's luscious E-cup tits spilled out of her blue bra with ease as the cars flew past below the bridge she occupied near the university. She and the other 5 pledges to the nursing sorority were to flash their tits at passing motorists as a challenge for entry, honestly. As hazing goes, it was kind of juvenile, and the petite blonde powerhouse was bored. Still, she kept up her smile and silly giggles to fit in with the squeals of the others. At least having her exposed grow hard made her feel some relief to the 18-year-old's perpetual horniness. Pledge J. Madeline yelled. Jody turned to the junior vice president of the house, Madeline, a tall fit redhead. "Yes, Miss Madeline," she responded as was required of the pledge, stepping in front with her hands behind her back, boobs forward. I can tell when someone is faking it. Madeline was easily a head taller and used it to intimidate. "Well, the others, maybe. Are you bored?" The others had stopped to watch the confrontation, eyes wide, mouths open. "Who told you to stop?" yelled Alexa, the other sister in charge of the pledge challenges. "Titties out." The others quickly lifted their shirts and flashed and waved to honks and a few cheers. Jody answered, "No, miss. Well, I've done this before, so it's kind of easy." She knew from the fiery evil arriving on Madeline's face that she had made an error by being honest. Easy? Well, hey, Alexa. Jody, the professional flasher, thinks this is easy. Should we move things up a level or two? She squeezed, and Jody closed her eyes at the mix of hurt and horny. Time for insertion stage. Madeline released her, and Jody faltered for a moment, then snapped back to attention. Jody looked at Alexa, the knockout Latina girl. Her brown-black eyes widened, then dropped into a mischievous squint. She nodded to Madeline and went to her bag nearby. It had to be 9 inches long, and thick. Jody knew she was supposed to be shocked and even scared, but she just smiled slyly. Her already wet cooch leaking on, long fingers grabbed her chin, forcing her to look up. "You think this is funny? You want to be a sister or not?" Jody was serious now, as she did want to belong to Sigma Lambda Upsilon Tau. It would open many doors for her both at school and in her career. "No, miss," and "yes, miss." Madeline seemed satisfied. Perhaps this little freshman was the real deal, a genuine. This could be fun. Strip 2. Now, Jody looked over and saw the others were trying to keep up with the challenge but were stealing glances her way. She looked to Alexa and saw she was stroking the and had a lusty playfulness in her eyes. Little did she know that Jody loved being naked in public. She had had many group sex adventures in the park near her house. Several gangbangs at school, and the locker room had the soccer coach watching. A striptease challenge by her friends on the beach last summer ended with an adult couple taking her back to their hotel room for the night. And she had done 4 guys the night before she left for college. She'd 2 guys in her dorm's laundry room just last night. Jody was indeed a professional exhibitionist, and she loved it. She tossed her t-shirt and dropped her booty shorts. All 7 of the other college hotties vocally gasped at the fact that she was not wearing anything under them. She returned to her at-rest position in nothing but her shoes. Arms behind, pointing almost upwards. Her pleasure pot was leaking, and the scent was obvious now that there was no barrier to absorb it. Madeline coughed out a word, cleared her throat, then repeated, "Crouch." Jody did so slowly and sensually, her sex dripping a light string of arousal that she longed to gather and lick up. Madeline handed her the toy and sneered wickedly. She then surprised Jody by bending down and whispering in her ear. "I know what you are, and it is fucking awesome. We will have a fuck ton of fun, I am sure. For now, just play along." She stood again, snapping, "Understand me? All of it, until just the end is showing." Jody smirked internally. This upper was hot for her. "This will be a blast to roleplay, yes, miss." Jody added a slight whimper to play along as she positioned the pink buzz beast at her opening. She knew it would slide in with relative ease considering her state of fuckwant. But she went slowly to keep up the scenario. Oh God. It's so, oh wow. She had 4 inches in, and the other women were all staring in aroused wonder. 1 more inch, then a twist, and all 9 settled inside her honey walls. She felt almost as full as when she had her 10-inch monster, brown beauty, in her. She honestly trembled and yelped as the vibrator switched on. She looked up in genuine surprise to see Alexa holding a small remote and smiling with lust. Madeline looked at her sister and nodded, all the way to 10. She can take it, Alexa tapped, and the buzz increased dramatically, loud enough the others could now hear it. It was heavenly nasty and sudden, and Jody came like an express train rushing by. Oh fuck me. Holy foo, oh, NNGH. Yes. She was teetering, her legs aching as they shook with lack of control. This was an epic come, and she was determined to enjoy the exhibition. Fluids of hot satisfaction oozed out the sides and the vibe began to slide out. Hold it in. No hands. Madeline snapped. Jody nodded with eyes clamped in ecstasy, as the climax went on and on. She flexed her ass, and the vibe began to pull back in. Alexa spoke for the stunned group. Madre Dios. Unbelievable, Jody was in salacious bliss as a series of 3 more rapidly building orgasms rocked her to her core. She squeezed her Kegel muscles as hard as she could, she did clench reps with them anytime she could, and the tool stayed inside. The vibrator was diminishing its buzz as Alexa slid down the speed, and Jody sighed and hissed out a breath. Her thighs quivering, a pool of joy juice under her that looked like she had pissed herself, and a satisfied red sweaty face all confirmed what Madeline had suspected. Well, I am impressed. You may stand. Do not remove it, Jody complied, her stance awkward to contain the filler. Madeline stepped to her, looking down just inches from the freshman's flushed face. She reached down without losing eye contact and slowly pulled the vibrator out of Jody's. The sudden emptiness made her almost topple with a returning ache to be. Madeline held up the long thing covered in a sheen of Jody's puree. Her eyes widened, and she nearly lost herself in a sudden craving to lick it off. But she had a job and a reputation to uphold. Instead, she breathed deeply and handed it to Jody. Your reward, clean it off. Jody nodded and proceeded to give a thorough tongue bath, loving the familiar flavor of her love tunnel. All of you, Madeline ordered, button up and back to the van. We have a lot to prepare for tonight. As the 5 others redressed quickly, Jody slowly pulled her shorts back up, sighing as their tightness comforted her in snugness around her well-used. Back in the van, the pledges were all about whispering and messaging each other. Jody smiled out the window at their obvious envy. They all knew that getting into most sororities these days meant some type. And for the most part, they seemed to be okay with today's challenge. Jody gathered that they were all fearful they would have to do the vibrator test soon, although she sensed several of them were looking forward to it. They had no idea just what was in store. That evening was to be a traditional mixer. A brother house was invited over for food, drink, dancing, and the inevitable salacious encounter. The 6 were told to dress in club attire and be ready to be used. What this detailed was unclear until, at 6:30, they were called to the basement party room. Jody was in her strapless 2-piece tube top and skirt. It was a fun sky blue shade with shiny threads woven in the bust line that gave it a fun sheen when she moved. Technically, it was a 2-piece dress, but she liked to expose her belly when she wore it. The skirt left nothing to the imagination. Matching 3-inch heels were the only other thing she wore, and a nice pair of silver hoop earrings. As the pledges gathered, they saw the entire house assembled. All 16 sisters were in drop-dead sexy outfits. Several including obvious stocking and garter sets. Jody wondered if she should change as she had 3 sets at her dorm room, only 5 minutes away. Oohs and ahs filled the room as the sisters all scrutinized the new meat. The 6 knew to stand at attention with arms behind and tits thrust out. Jody added a knee bend to give her petite and curvy frame more appeal. Madeline raised her hand, and the room was quiet. Jasmine, the tall blonde president, sporting a standard spaghetti strap LBD, addressed the room while looking at the pledges with practiced indifference. "Sisters, tonight we have our first mixer of the year." Cheers and whoops followed. "Our house has a reputation." "Well, several, actually, snickers and oaths, we are accommodating. We love to entertain, and we never let any guest leave unsatisfied. We are smart and capable women who will soon be practicing the art of nursing. An art form whose primary raison d'etre is taking care of our patients' needs." She lowered her voice and glowered at the 6 noobs. "Well, tonight, my little nothings, our brothers from Delta are your patients. And how you treat them will determine who spends the rest of the year eating shitty dorm food and fucking dweebs from the engineering school." The sisters all laughed uproariously, and the pledges smiled and blushed some. Jody felt her wet leak a little more. "Dweebs were often surprisingly attentive fucks, Madeline. The rules: you will each be assigned a room. In it is a bed, some water and other fun things to drink, a large bottle of lube, use it well, and a box of toys. You will dance with as many guests as you can and attempt to seduce them with your moves. If you get a taker, take him to your room. A sister here will be assigned as your monitor and will time exactly 20 minutes. You have only that long to get a load of from him. Afterwards, clean up or don't and go get another. Hopefully, after 2 or 3, they will be lining up for you." The last she said, with a knowing look at her fellow sisters who smiled mischievously. She paused for a second, and Jody heard the curly-headed tall girl next to her, pledge tea, gulp and whine a little. It resonated fear rather than arousal. "Now, before you think about just using your hands or mouth, hear this: the 4 fastest in the challenge will get into the house automatically if they have had 8 and at least half of their loads in there, or from actual. Ending A with facials and tit coatings is encouraged, and if you want to swallow, you may." She took a moment to home in on Jody, and the freshman sensed the look and met her eye to eye. "There is also a cash prize of $500 to the one who gets there 8 the fastest. So, if you think you are slut enough, we will make you a whore." The room broke out in cheers and applause. The pledges were each met by an assigned sister, led to the bar for some glasses of courage, and then to their assigned brothel chamber. At the bar, Jody was surprised to see the president, Jasmine, approach her. "You have a big fan in Madeline. That isn't easily done. She told me about the bridge like it was the sexiest thing she had ever seen. My curiosity is piqued, so I decided to be your monitor for the night." She was close now, her breath smelling of wine and fruity lip gloss. "I hope I won't be disappointed." Jody was looking straight forward and sighed at the president's scent. Jasmine's luscious. Probably. In the second-floor room Jody was assigned, there was a standard full-sized bed with a post-style headboard and a couple of pillows. The dressing table contained the booze and water and the lube bottle. Jasmine crouched facing Jody, and she saw the senior was wearing crotchless red panties, lips glistening. She pulled out a box from under the bed. "Inside here are some silk ties, a pair of handcuffs, and some varying sizes of butt plugs. If you want or, more importantly, your partner wants, you can use them to get your loads. Or not. I am guessing that alike you won't." She was cut off by Jody reaching in and pulling out a decent-sized plug with a pink jewel on the end. Jasmine's eyes widened as Jody stepped to the lube bottle. She coated the plug, then bent over slowly to allow the president to see she was naked underneath. With practiced skill Jody slowly pushed the plug into her needy ass. She hadn't been anally taken since she got here 3 weeks ago. She let go when there was an inch or so left, and her ass muscles sucked it into a perfect, snug fit. Jody moaned in delight, dropped the hem of her skirt, and stood up to see Jasmine flushed and mouth agape. Okay. Wow. You really are a slut. Impressive." She put the box back and stood smoothing out her dress. She passed Jody and then abruptly spun. Her left hand was suddenly at Jody's needy, impeccably manicured fingers squeezed hard, eliciting a yelp of surprise. "Don't get too cocky," she yanked the hard, and Jody flinched in painful pleasure. Pun intended. "Let's go, they're here." Jasmine spun and strutted out, Jody followed, her breathing rapid and her pulse in time with the thump of the music from below.